Hi, I'm Isabel, I'm 15, I'm a member of Bolton Youth Council and I'm here in Mossbank Park to talk all about green spaces. I'm here with Rosie from RHS and I'm going to ask her some questions. So Rosie, what inspired you to become part of RHS?
Well, since I was really young, I just loved growing stuff and being outdoors. And then when I was older, after I went to university, I moved to the city and I realised that living in the city, accessing the environment and green space is like really important to me, but also I realised it's really important to other people as well. And then I realised that actually what I really like most is talking to people about the environment and how important green spaces are, and using my knowledge that I learned at uni to kind of share some of the stuff I'd learned with other people. So,
yeah, sounds great. And question 2, what is your favourite part of a green space?
oh, that's such a good question. For me, my favourite part of a green space is the plants that you kind of make up the green space. And I think like maybe sometimes people don't always immediately think of the individual plants that kind of make up a green space. Maybe you think of the trees because they're kind of huge plants, but for me it's like the complex of all of the different plants together that is, for me, it's my favourite part of a green space.
So what plants are you planting in a green space and why?
So as part of my work, when we look at a green space, we might want to think about how we want the green space to kind of function. Maybe we want to, if it exists, maybe we want to improve it with plants. And there may be some things that we really want to like focus on when we think about that. So plants do loads of different things. For example, if we find that a green space doesn't have much shade in it, maybe you want to think about plants that could provide shade, and maybe that would be like big trees or big shrubs, stuff like that, that would actually kind of give a canopy perhaps. Or maybe actually the green space we're looking at is really wet, and maybe the plants that we select there either thrive really well in really wet environments naturally, and we can select them and think about them to put in, or just putting more plants in that will help to kind of suck up that water anyway. So just generally putting more plants in, that maybe is a way that we could think about what plants we put in a green space. Also, plants are really beautiful, so it kind of depends on what people like, but I go for stuff that I really like the look of, or the smell of, or the feel of, and something that's kind of happening all year round. So maybe you have spring bulbs coming up early in the year, so you want to consider them, but then later on in the year maybe you realise there's no colour going on, so you want to think about what's flowering later on in the year too. So a couple of things to think about, and you try and think about them all together, but yeah, that's how I kind of think about what plants go into a green space.
When you also think about picking plants, do you think about whether they're native or not?
Yeah, so native plants are, well, they're plants that kind of grow naturally in the UK when we're talking about native plants here. And they are really important. So what they can do is they support a lot of our wildlife, like our pollinators, and a lot of native plants, they produce a lot of food for our wildlife. But native plants are the only plants that do that, they just do that quite well. Non-native plants are also really important to think about too when we're thinking about biodiversity and how they can support our wildlife, because sometimes those non-native plants can actually fill the gap where native plants can't. And to be honest with you, planting as much stuff as possible is kind of like the best thing to do for wildlife, because then it gives them a range of food and habitats throughout the whole year, whereas natives maybe on their own don't provide quite as broad a range of functions as like native and non-native plants do.
Why are living walls really good?
That's a really good question, quite a big question. So for me, I think living walls are really beneficial and really exciting because they can really purify our air. So if you select the right plants that can kind of capture the particles that cause bad air quality, then you're kind of like cleaning the air using plants, which is kind of, I think, a really amazing thing to do. And it does depend on the plants that you select, and also how you can care for them within the living wall. But yeah, that is a massive benefit that living walls offer. Another thing that living walls can do is actually to cool the inside of buildings that they're kind of put on. which is kind of amazing when you think about energy consumption, because when we're looking at hotter and drier summers, people are going to be considering putting air conditioning units in their buildings, and actually living walls can kind of help to not have to use so much energy in terms of air conditioning. But in winter, they can also help to insulate a building, and that can also reduce on like heating bills and stuff like that. So that's pretty good, I think, as well. The plants you choose can also offer, again, lots of biodiversity for plants, for wildlife, by choosing lots of different plants that you put in there. And also they can do things like start to capture rainwater that's coming down, to slow the flow of water into drains and stuff like that. That helps with flooding, and they're just kind of beautiful, I think, in themselves. Depending on how you maintain them and look after them, and how you design them, they're an amazing thing to be able to interact with on your street, perhaps, and kind of have around you, and maybe something that you pass on your way to work or on your studies. It's just maybe something that's kind of you don't always come across. So I think that's kind of amazing as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions.
No problem at all. It's been really good to chat to you.
Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. This is the 5th episode of the series, so stay tuned for the next one.